Recently, we had a kidnapping hoax take the headlines by storm. The girl in question, Carly Russell, faked her own kidnapping in Alabama. But in the beginning, it seemed like a very scary and real kidnapping that just happened on the side of the highway after Carly claimed to see a toddler walking alone and then got out of the car to check on him. So a massive amount of resources were used to try and locate her, and people were and are still fuming at the thought of someone faking something of that sort. Now, one of the people who made considerable efforts to help locate Carly was Angela Harris. Angela's daughter, Aniah, was once the victim of a kidnapping back in 2019, and a kidnapping that ended in a horrific and heartbreaking way. So today we're going to talk about this case. It's the case of Aniah Blanchard. This case was one that was so hard to sort through all of the pieces of information, and each article, document, and piece of information seems to have worded things a little bit differently. Nevertheless, I did my absolute best to sort through all of it to try to find out exactly what took place. Because as I said, it is a very horrible and haunting crime that happened. Hey guys, I'm Annie Elise. This is 10 to Life. Let's jump right in. 19-year-old Aniah Haley Blanchard was born to her proud parents Elijah Blanchard Sr. and Angela Haley Harris. She was born on June 22, 2000, which was actually also on Angela's birthday. Aniah was born 17 months after Elijah and Angela had their first child, a son named Elijah as well, just like his father. Angela and Elijah got divorced when their children were young, but from the outside, it seems like they always did their best to make sure that the kids were not growing up in a tense environment and really were doing their best to co-parent. So Elijah Blanchard Sr. went on to marry a woman named Yeshiba, while Angela married a UFC fighter named Walt Harris in 2010. Now let's talk a little bit about Aniah. Aniah was your typical happy-go-lucky girl. She had an infectious laugh, loved to make people smile, and was just a joy to be around. She had a passion for softball and was a team player both on and off the ball field in high school. In high school, she was named as team captain as well, and she even received an award at the end of her senior year that was for players who have leadership skills, passion, and exemplary character. Not only was she an incredible friend and teammate, but she was an even more incredible sister and daughter. Aniah was an amazing big sister to her two younger siblings, Asa and Isla. And part of the reason why Aniah was so close to her siblings and such a protective older sister is because her mother Angela worked as a nurse in their community, and her work hours were sometimes crazy. So as Aniah got older, she was always the one to step in and help fill the childcare gaps for her siblings. Not only was she an amazing big sister, but she also had an extremely special bond with her older brother Elijah, and the two of them were considered inseparable. Angela and Aniah were what Angela has described as best friends. She could tell Aniah anything in confidence. After high school, Aniah started attending college at Southern Union State Community College and moved to Auburn. Aniah's dream was to become a teacher and a softball coach. She lived in Auburn with her dog Blue and her roommate Sarah, and Auburn was a couple hours away from Aniah's hometown of Homewood, Alabama, which meant that Aniah couldn't see her family as much anymore, well, besides her brother, who was also living in Auburn. But the physical distance between her and her family didn't seem to affect their bond in the slightest. Aniah and Angie were in constant communication and FaceTimed pretty much every single morning as a way to see what each other would be up to that day. Aniah also frequently called her dad to check in, and she and her stepfather Walt texted every single day. On the night of October 23, 2019, Aniah and her brother Elijah had spent the day in northern Alabama with Angela, their mother. Around 7 p.m. that night, Aniah said it was getting late and that they probably needed to head back to Auburn because they both had to work in the morning. So Aniah gave her mom a hug and her mom gave her a kiss on the cheek before she and Elijah headed back to Auburn. On their way back to Auburn, they made a pit stop to see their stepdad Walt. Now, it was a fairly quick visit because they still had about 2 hours left to drive. Aniah did mention that she was tired, but told him that she would be fine to drive. So they ended the short and sweet visit with hugs and I love yous, and the two of them were back on the road to Auburn together. Around 11 p.m., Aniah dropped Elijah off at his apartment in Auburn, which was just about 10 minutes away from her apartment. At 11:09 p.m., her roommate Sarah texted to ask if she was close to home. Aniah immediately responded with, "Yeah." But Aniah still wasn't home 30 minutes later. Sarah texted Aniah again, this time asking if she had gone out without her. See, they were roommates, but they were also best friends, and they hung out quite a bit. Very quickly, Sarah got a text back that said, "I'm smoking a blunt, LOL." Now, given that Aniah had never used the word blunt before, that was very weird for Sarah to read. So she asked who she was with. Aniah told her that she was with someone named Eric, and that she had just met him. Sarah asked Aniah, "Where are you? Where are you at with this Eric guy?" And she texted her this around 11:43, but she never got a text back. The two of them also shared each other's location, which is something most college kids do with their friends these days, especially on the heels of the Idaho 4 case. I think it's become even more common for college kids to share their location and tell people where they're at and what they're doing just as an extra precaution and safety measure. Now, we know that the Idaho case happened at their home, but in general, I truly think it has rocked the sense of security for a lot of college students and for parents as well that have sent their kids so far away for college. So it's not uncommon for college students to be sharing their location with each other. Now, when Aniah was sharing her location, we obviously know it was well before the Idaho case took place. However, Aniah always had a deep fear of something bad happening to her, like being kidnapped or murdered, which is why she and Sarah shared locations with each other regularly. So when Sarah checked Aniah's location, it showed that she was at another nearby apartment complex, which was a place where a lot of the students lived and hung out. So Sarah ended up just going to bed, just assuming that she would talk to Aniah in the morning and hear about this new Eric guy that she hung out with and get filled in on the night before. But when Sarah woke up the next morning, she went straight to Aniah's room to hear about her night with Eric, but to her surprise, Aniah wasn't there. So she again checked her location to see where she was, and there was no location showing up. Around that same general time, Aniah's mother, Angie, decided to call Aniah to see what she had planned for that day, because remember, they spoke regularly, but Aniah didn't answer her phone. So Angie just assumed that she was busy. Sarah, having no clue why Aniah didn't come home and why her phone wasn't pinging, decided to call the mom that Aniah was scheduled to babysit for. The mom, Karina, told Sarah that Aniah had not shown up that morning, which this was extremely unlike Aniah. Aniah was reliable, she was kind, caring, and nurturing, but most of all, she loved those kids and enjoyed all of the time that she spent with them. Her not showing up was not something that had ever happened before. So Sarah immediately began driving around the area checking for Aniah, but she wasn't able to find her car anywhere either. Sarah was growing increasingly worried, so she reached out to Aniah's brother Elijah to help her look. She explained that Aniah hadn't come home the night before, and she told him about this mystery man named Eric, whom Aniah had mentioned smoking a blunt with the night before. So the red flags immediately went off for Aniah's brother Elijah, because again, Aniah was reliable, responsible, and most importantly, responsive. Going entirely off the grid like this was seriously out of character for her. So he immediately called their mother Angela and told her what was going on. Now, as a parent, hearing that something is going on with your children is the scariest call to receive. So without hesitation, Angela and Walt immediately started driving the 2-hour drive down to Auburn. While they were still driving, Elijah was frantically still searching and trying to see who may have spoken to Aniah or who would know anything about where she could be. He contacted Karina, the mom that she was scheduled to babysit for as well, and he asked if she had heard from Aniah at all. But when she said no, and that she also tried calling her a bunch of times with zero response, he told Karina that they couldn't find her anywhere, and that he was at her apartment. When Angela and Walt got to Auburn, there was one thing that specifically stuck out to them. Aniah's dog Blue was at the apartment. Now, like I said earlier, Aniah was responsible. They knew that she would never have just left Blue like that with zero communication. She loved him, and he was her pride and joy, so something was off here. This was not like Aniah. She wouldn't have willingly gone no contact with everyone in her life, so her family decided to get the police involved. That evening, Yeshiba, Aniah's stepmother, texted a friend named Roy, who worked for a local news station. Within an hour, Roy had pulled behind-the-scenes strings, and Aniah's story was getting news coverage. First with an article that read, in part, "Police are searching for an Auburn-area college student believed to have been missing since late Wednesday night. Aniah Haley Blanchard, a 19-year-old from Homewood, was reported missing to Auburn police on Thursday morning. She last communicated with a friend just before midnight on Wednesday. An investigation into determining her whereabouts is underway. At this point, there is no evidence of foul play. However, the investigation will continue until her whereabouts are determined." So word started getting out fairly quickly, not only to Aniah's friends and loved ones, but also all around Alabama. Social media posts started being posted left and right, and Aniah's family pleaded with the public to help them find Aniah.
Angela Harris here. If you have any leads on where our daughter is, Aniah Blanchard, please go to the authorities. Tell someone she was last seen in a black Honda CRV 2017. Tag is 49 B2356. BS 356, I'm sorry. She was possibly last seen downtown at downtown Auburn, Southeastern, and Sky Bar. If you have any information, please come forward.
Not only was law enforcement working on the missing persons case with multiple agencies, but there were searches being done by the general public and Aniah's friends and family. Flyers were being posted on social media, and also hard copies were being handed out, but still nobody knew where Aniah was, where she had driven to. It was like she seemingly vanished into thin air. Then finally, on October 25th, Aniah's car was found around 6:15 p.m., nearly 48 hours after anyone had heard from her or seen her last. It was in Montgomery, Alabama, which is over 50 miles from where she was last seen. But Aniah was not with or in the car. The car was damaged, and even worse, there were signs in the car that led police to the thought that maybe it wasn't just a no foul play missing persons case after all. On October 28th, police released surveillance video that showed Aniah in a gas station prior to her vehicle last being seen, driving southbound. The gas station was just 2 minutes from her apartment. She had walked in at 11:21 p.m. and was only in there for a minute and a half or 2 minutes max. However, police only released a couple seconds of surveillance footage. While in the gas station, she bought a drink and sour cream and onion chips. On October 30th, when it was completely clear to law enforcement that something more sinister had gone down, it became a much larger search in terms of organizations and agencies. The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and other top agencies became involved in the search for Aniah. On October 31st, law enforcement shared with the public that they no longer believed the disappearance of Aniah was a non-foul play disappearance. In the car, they had found blood that was, in their words, indicative of someone suffering a life-threatening injury. The public was desperate to find Aniah. Not only was everyone extremely worried for her, but their sense of security was completely shaken. Aniah didn't have any sort of beef or any altercations with anyone. She was someone who brought people closer together. So something happened to her, and the suspect was still unknown and was still on the loose, which was absolutely terrifying to the public. But more than anyone else, Aniah's family was hurting. They still had no clue where she was, but now it seemed as if something terrible had happened to her. Not only were her parents struggling, but so were her siblings. Walt even had to go to 6-year-old Eliah's school one day to calm her down because she couldn't stop crying about her missing older sister. On November 6th, 2 weeks after Aniah went missing, police released surveillance video photos of a person of interest. This was a huge turning point in the case. A witness had said that he had seen this man force Aniah into her car before they drove off together. The witness cried during questioning and told them that he felt guilty that he had not said something sooner. He allegedly had walked back to his hotel room and told his wife what he had seen, but his wife had instructed him to stay out of it. By November 7th, they had the name of the person in the photos, and the U.S. Marshals were on the hunt for this suspect. The man was 29-year-old Ibrahim Yazid. He was now considered an official suspect, meaning there was no Eric. There was no mystery person she was smoking a blunt with, a friend she had met up with. That was all a ruse. Aniah had been forced into a car by what was seemingly a complete stranger. And those texts most likely weren't from Aniah either, and more likely were part of a bigger plot and cover-up as to what really happened. Now, Ibrahim was a career criminal with arrests spanning in multiple states. At the time, he was even out on bond for charges of kidnapping and attempted murder. To get a deeper sense of what kind of guy Ibrahim is, we can go through some of his previous charges. In 2011, Ibrahim was charged with 2 counts of first-degree robbery after he and 3 accomplices robbed 2 men at gunpoint at a hotel. They stole $2,700 in cash, a phone, the men's wallets, and a $50 money order. Then in 2012, he was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder when he decided that it would be a good idea to try and hit 2 police officers in their patrol car with his car. Lucky for him and unlucky for everyone else, all 4 of those charges were eventually dropped by a grand jury. But this didn't stop Ibrahim. In 2013, Ibrahim was arrested on 2 charges. The first charge was possession of a pistol without a permit, and the second charge was first-degree possession of marijuana. 2 weeks later, an officer attempted to pull him over in the car that he was driving, but Ibrahim did not stop driving. Rather, he took the police on a wild chase by jumping out of his car that was still in motion and then running. After he was caught, there was around 3 grams of crack found in the same area where he was caught in, and when officers searched his car, they found 16 grams of marijuana. That resulted in 3 drug charges and 1 count of attempting to elude. In 2016, he was sentenced to 1 month and 30 days, so basically 2 months, for the pistol charge and for the marijuana charge. The judge then suspended that sentence and gave him 6 months probation instead. For the 4 charges that followed, he was given a suspended 13-month sentence. Now, you'd think that someone receiving that much grace might make them just decide to change their life around just a little bit, but not Ibrahim. Because literally 3 days later, he was charged with a trafficking spice. Take a wild guess on what happened with that charge. I'll give you a little bit of a hint, but take a wild guess, because if you're guessing that it was dismissed, you'd be guessing right. In 2017, he was arrested once again and taken to the Johnson County Jail in Olathe, Kansas. This time for 2 counts of aggravated battery on a law enforcement officer, 1 count of aggravated, 1 count of reckless fleeing law enforcement, and 1 count of marijuana possession. He was in jail for 8 months leading up to his trial in 2018, in which he was only found guilty of the fleeing law enforcement and marijuana charge. Now, as if this would be a surprise to anyone, he was given a 16-month jail sentence only to be released 6 days later to continue his streak of absolute reckless behavior. Ibrahim went back to Alabama after his release, where his behavior escalated even more. In January 2019, Ibrahim and 2 of his criminal pals decided to hold 2 elderly men hostage at a hotel. They took a handgun with them and proceeded to beat both of the men. However, most of the focus went to the older 77-year-old man. They beat him up until he was near death and completely unconscious. Then they stole his Rolex watch, his guns, wallet with money in it, and cards, and even the clothing. They stuffed him in the car, and Ibrahim and one of his accomplices headed down the highway. Now, a common saying is criminals are dumb, and thankfully that was also the case for these 2 idiots, because they decided to drive erratically on the highway, which led to them being pulled over with the victim in the backseat still. Ibrahim was charged with 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 2 counts of first-degree robbery, attempted murder, and possession of marijuana. After he was arrested, he was released on bond, and he was still out on bond when he was named as the suspect in Aniah's disappearance. So now that we have his background, we can get back to what happened after he was named a suspect. In the very early morning hours on November 8th, Ibrahim was booked into jail after the U.S. Marshals located him in Escambia County, Florida. He was taken into custody after a short chase and charged with first-degree kidnapping. He was placed onto a stretcher when he got arrested, and based on his mugshot, we can assume he had to get checked out. After being booked, he was being held as a fugitive in Florida. However, that evening, a judge decided to extradite him back to Lee County, Alabama, after a brief court hearing.
Ibrahim is coming in, Your Honor.
Right. Okay. Right.
Ibrahim had his first court appearance on November 12th, where it was decided that his previous bond would be revoked and he would remain in custody, which, finally, after everything he had done, he finally wouldn't be out and about and free to harm anyone else. During that court hearing, there was a gag order put in place that barred anyone related to the case or any potential witnesses from speaking with the media. That was the start in the pursuit for justice for Aniah. But the fact of the matter still remained. Aniah was still missing. No one knew where she was, and by that point, law enforcement also didn't believe Ibrahim was the only person involved in the disappearance, which we will get to in a bit. On November 14th, Ibrahim's attorney asked for a reduced bond. He explained that Ibrahim was in solitary confinement due to receiving death threats, so if the judge granted a reduced bond, he could go to Montgomery County Jail instead, since his bond was revoked for charges that he had in that county. The judge denied the motion, and he did not end up getting that lower bond, which was clearly the smartest choice. After all, he had received a mere slap on the wrist for everything that he had done up until that point, and Lee County was not going to be the one to continue that pattern. That was essentially what was argued in court that day as well. Montgomery County was the reason that he was out on bond when Aniah went missing. That same day, Aniah's mother Angela and stepfather Walt went on the Dr. Phil show. They said that even though they knew that she was hurt in some way based on the blood found, they were still keeping hope that she was alive and out there somewhere. They also did not believe that it was a random attack. The next day, Aniah's father Elijah and her stepmother Yeshiba did an interview that seemed to contradict that.
Yesterday afternoon on Dr. Phil, Aniah's mother and stepfather said they do not believe that this was random, that they believe this may have been premeditated. How do you all feel about that? Do you agree?
Do you want me to? Our contention is that this was something random. Basically, by seeing the photos from the car being damaged, we initially start coming up with different scenarios as far as what could have possibly happened. And, like I said, again, it's random. And we initially stated that, we thought that it was a carjacking. And so that has always been our position.
And we know that you all are a blended family. How has this terrible experience brought you together as a family?
Well, the end result, we want to find Aniah. So we've all tried to join efforts and try to make sure we get our daughter home. And it's been good because she's been able to bring us closer together.
Last night we learned that Ibrahim Yazid, who's the suspect who is in custody, has been moved to solitary confinement due to death threats from other inmates. To your knowledge, has there been any cooperation at all from him?
We have not heard anything. That's something that hadn't been discussed with us by Chief Register or Brandon Hughes, the district attorney. So haven't heard anything in regards to that.
We've been sharing information about awareness bracelets that have been made and are being sold. We've also shared information about a PayPal account if people want to help out. If someone's at home wanting to financially help, what is this money doing to help find Aniah, bring her home?
Well, in the beginning, we were going to use the money for search efforts, for the supplies, for the people who are searching. So since the search team has gone back, we're just still taking money up just to, help with the search efforts.
Sure.
Yes.
And online in the last couple of days on social media, I've been seeing some online prayer circles and people checking in from all over the world, Arizona, Scotland, Uganda. How does that make you feel to know that people around the world not only know about your daughter, but are praying for her safe return?
It's amazing. We need all the prayers. We need the community as a whole to get Aniah's name out there. We want to make her presence. We want to maintain that presence. And so we're grateful for that.
And we know in the early days you were having near daily briefings with the Auburn Police Department. Now that we're 3 weeks in, what does the day-to-day look like for you all?
Chief Register and his team are very good. They call me every day, or they send random texts, let me know, what's going on with the case. They've been really good with communicating with us. I have no problem with what they're doing. They're strictly professional, but they don't want to give us anything that's going to be damaged or anything like that. But they are communicating with us daily.
Ibrahim had another court date on November 20th, where the judge ordered him to submit his DNA. That was based on the fact that male DNA had been found in Aniah's car. On November 22nd, a new break came in the case. A second arrest was made. Antoine Fisher, who goes by Squirmy, was arrested and charged with first-degree kidnapping. He was a friend of Ibrahim's, and it was alleged that he had helped with getting rid of evidence and had driven Ibrahim to do so. Antoine has his own past, though. In 2004, he was charged with capital murder after shooting a woman. Some sources say it was during a drug deal, while others say he was just straight up robbing her for $60. Antoine ended up taking a plea deal in which he pled guilty to a felony murder charge, and he served somewhere between 2 to 3 years of that. Again, that depends on which source you read, but they all have that same general time frame. Just 3 days after Antoine was released, another arrest came. This time, they arrested a 63-year-old man, David Lee Johnson Jr. The court documents allege that David lied about his son's involvement in transporting Ibrahim to Florida. Essentially, the police went to where Antoine was living, which was with David and David's son, both with the same name, so we'll call him Little David, and the police had a tip that Ibrahim had maybe been at the house. Well, Big David told police that he had seen Ibrahim leave with an unknown white female in an unknown white vehicle. When officers tracked Ibrahim down in Florida, they realized that Little David had driven him. When they talked to Little David, he came clean about driving Ibrahim to Florida, even though he had known Ibrahim was wanted by the police. He also told them that his dad also knew Ibrahim was a wanted man and had watched them drive away. If you lie to the police, you run the risk of arrest, and Big David had to learn that lesson the hard way. He was released on a $7,500 bond, though, shortly after his arrest. But his arrest was proof that law enforcement was going to do whatever they needed to do to hold anyone involved accountable. That same day, the biggest break in the case would come. A body was found in Macon County. Authorities released a statement saying that they had strong reasons to believe that it was Aniah. There were multiple clothing items out in the woods where they found the body. One of the main detectives took a photo of a sorrel boot. He then asked Angela and Walt to come meet him at the district attorney's office, where he showed them the photo of the boot. Walt dropped the phone, exclaiming, "Y'all excuse me," and began punching a concrete wall and screaming. His worst fear had come true. The boots were something that he had recently gotten for Aniah as a gift while they were traveling. The boot was unmistakable, and that meant that their precious child was no longer alive. And for Angela, I can imagine that this was even more of a gut punch, considering she had lost a toddler son in a car accident before Aniah was born. It truly makes me so sad to think about the pain that she must have felt, and I'm sure will forever feel after losing 2 of her babies. Initially, Antoine wasn't given a bond, but on the 26th, he was granted a $50,000 bond just 1 day after Aniah's body had been recovered. The initial reason for denial was due to the nature of his previous charges and the fact that he had many warrants for unpaid traffic tickets that he had not shown up to court for. However, his attorney maintained he was a hard-working father of 4 whose family relied on him to meet their needs. On December 2nd, after Aniah's body had been positively identified, Ibrahim's kidnapping charge was upgraded to capital murder in a press conference.
During the course of this investigation into the disappearance of Aniah Blanchard, it was determined by Auburn Police Division that Ibrahim Yazid abducted Aniah from the Chevron on College Street here in Auburn. Once Mr. Yazid was arrested, we felt like we had the perpetrator of this crime in custody. Our full focus of the investigation turned to finding Aniah. On November 25th, investigative efforts led us to County Road 2 in Macon County, where we discovered human remains that the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences later positively ID'd as belonging to Aniah Blanchard. And subsequent to that, there was an autopsy done, and the medical examiner ruled that Aniah Blanchard was killed in a manner of homicide. Cause of death was a gunshot wound. As a result of the determination by the medical examiner's office, we are now upgrading the charges from kidnapping in the first degree to capital murder, and in this case, capital murder is the intentional murder during a kidnapping, and will also be seeking the death penalty against Mr. Yazid. In the interest of public safety, I do want to say, to follow up on a report or a statement rendered by the Auburn Police Division last week, that we have determined that Mr. Yazid is the lone person responsible in this case for abducting Aniah Blanchard. He is the lone person responsible for Aniah's murder. He remains in Lee County Jail without bond, but he is also innocent of these charges until we overcome our burden and prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
That press conference was the first time Aniah's cause of death had been publicly released. Ibrahim went to court a couple of days after that to be formally charged, and he had his own things to say.
My right, I got a right too.
Well, the capital murder charge that is involved with a death occurring during a kidnapping, the probable cause for that has been amended to state what is on the warrant. Each of them satisfy probable cause to charge you with the crime. The second capital murder charge involves the shooting with a firearm inside a vehicle, and that itself can constitute capital murder, as I'm sure your lawyer has told you.
But they don't have no video, no audio of me shooting anyone. That's what I'm trying to see, how y'all gonna bind me over on hearsay, but y'all ain't presenting no evidence. And then now there's a whole different statement. There's a whole different convenience store you saying. So why the kidnapping and all that did not get dismissed?
I'm not a law enforcement officer, and I'm not going to argue their case for you.
But you signed it.
What's on the probable cause warrant does satisfy the issuance of the warrant, and I have done that. And these conversations would be better had with your lawyer outside the presence of a courtroom.
Ibrahim, in case you didn't know, audio and video aren't the only way you can be proven guilty for a crime. And maybe you should let your lawyer, who is literally standing next to you, do the talking before you get yourself in even a larger pickle. But that's just my opinion. Do what you want to do. On December 17th, Antoine was cleared of all of the charges because Antoine had given law enforcement the exact information that they had been desperately searching for. He told them that Ibrahim had driven to Montgomery shortly after Aniah went missing in a car that looked just like Aniah's. The reason he was there was because he was looking for some help. Antoine claimed he didn't know exactly what was happening, but they had driven somewhere in his truck, leaving Aniah's car at the apartment complex, which is the same complex that had ended up being found out, by the way. Anyways, he said that they stopped and Ibrahim had gotten out. When he looked in his mirror, he saw Ibrahim dragging something wrapped up in a comforter into the woods. From what he could see, it looked like two legs, and he point blank told Ibrahim, "Tell me that's not a body." He told him that when he got back, to which he replied that he had shot a girl when she went for the gun. With that amount of damage to Aniah's car and him saying that she went for the gun, one can simply infer that Aniah fought back. There was also a bullet hole in the door, and the seat was absolutely covered in blood. Aniah's celebration of life was in late December 2019, just before Christmas. More than 2,000 people who had been impacted by Aniah and her story showed up to celebrate her life. The celebration included a balloon release of baby blue balloons because baby blue was her favorite color. Aniah's parents all stood, side by side, united up on the stage where the major announcement was made by then Alabama State Rep Marica Coleman. They would be working on a bill called Aniah's Law. The purpose of it would be to give judges more power to deny bond to repetitive offenders when it comes to violent crimes that are committed. Because if Ibrahim had been denied bond after almost killing that poor old elderly man, Aniah would likely still be here today. That December day was also named Aniah Haley Blanchard Day in her city of Homewood. Every year on December 21st, her city remembers Aniah for the kind, compassionate, incredible young woman that she was.
I want to say forgive me because this is not on the program, but I had permission from Haley. On behalf, well, first of all, giving honor to God and to Pastor Mike, thank you so much. On behalf of the city of Homewood and Mayor Scott McBrayer, I present this proclamation that today he has decided to make today Aniah Blanchard Day. They came to my house this morning and presented this and asked me to present it. So I'm going to read it. So glad the four of you are up here. Hey. Okay, proclamation. Her name is misspelled because they rushed to do it, but I'll make sure that gets fixed. Proclamation, Aniah Haley Blanchard Day, December 21st, 2019. Whereas Aniah Haley Blanchard was born to Elijah Blanchard and Angela Harris on June 22nd, 2000. And whereas Aniah Haley Blanchard graduated from Homewood High School in May 2018, where she was a member of the softball team. And whereas Aniah Haley Blanchard enrolled in Southern Union Community College in Watley, Alabama, to further her education, she had plans to become a teacher and a softball coach. And whereas the city of Homewood wishes to recognize and acknowledge the passing of Aniah Haley Blanchard, and whereas the life of Aniah Haley Blanchard is being honored and remembered by family, friends, and citizens all over the world. And whereas the bright light of Aniah Haley Blanchard has forever been extinguished, she will forever live in our hearts. Now, therefore, on behalf of I, Scott McBrayer, Mayor of the City of Homewood, Alabama, hereby declare that December 21st, 2019 be forever known, remembered, and proclaimed as Aniah Haley Blanchard Day in the city of Homewood, Alabama. Love you all.
The Alabama court system has proven to move incredibly slow, and while that's excruciating for families who are waiting for justice, the wait will hopefully be worth it for all of them in the end. On November 4th of 2022, more than 3 years after Aniah's murder, the case went before a grand jury in Macon County, the same county where Aniah was found. Ibrahim was indicted on 3 counts of capital murder, 1 count of capital murder during a kidnapping, 1 count of capital murder during a robbery, and 1 count of capital murder involving a victim in a vehicle. On March 6th of this year, Ibrahim pled not guilty to all 3 charges. He is still in jail awaiting trial, which could be quite a while. The prosecutors are still going for the death penalty, which will likely add more time to this case. Aniah's family and loved ones continue to seek to turn their pain into purpose. In July of 2020, just a few months after they lost Aniah, Angie started the Aniah's Heart Foundation. About a week after Aniah went missing, Angie heard a voice say, "Mom, please don't let this happen to anyone else." And that is Angie's mission. The foundation seeks to help find missing persons, support the families during such critical periods, share Aniah's story, and also teach classes for self-defense and situational awareness.
Aniah's heart is because of Aniah's heart. Aniah had a heart of gold. She loved giving, and she would do anything for anybody, and that's what always stood out to me, was her heart was so tender and so caring. So immediately when I knew that I was going to do something for her in her memory, it was just no question that it was going to be called Aniah's Heart. I would say that Aniah would just always say, it's going to be okay. To whoever she's talking to, it's going to be okay. And that's one thing that just sticks out in my mind right now. When Aniah was missing, immediately someone from Homewood called and said, what is Aniah's favorite color? And I didn't register to me why they were asking that then. I said baby blue. And just the next day, the whole city, state, even country, baby blue everywhere. People just putting out baby blue bows, baby blue lights, just anything they could do to represent her and bring awareness to, hey, Aniah Blanchard is missing and we need to help find her. And that was the way they did it, by showing her favorite color. I want you to understand that Aniah was only going into the store to buy a bag of chips near campus, and then she was gone. This can happen to anybody, anywhere, at any time. Aniah fought for her life, and through Aniah's heart, we will finish her fight. The mission of Aniah's Heart is to bring awareness and to educate everyone on personal safety, to help prevent them from becoming victims of such violent crimes. Aniah's Heart will also provide self-defense training, search and rescue services, and support to the families of missing loved ones. If you wish to fight with us, connect, or give support, visit our website at www.aniahsheart22.com. And thank you.
On February 23, 2021, Aniah's Law passed in the Alabama House. In November of 2022, Aniah's Law was voted into effect with nearly 81% in support. When Aniah passed away, her family felt that they had lost everything. UFC was the absolute last thing on Walt's mind. He was ranked 9th in the world at that point, but nothing else mattered to him other than Aniah and his family. He couldn't even fathom going back to fighting. That was until he had a dream in which Aniah told him to keep going. When he woke up from that dream, he knew that that is what she would want him to do, because she was his biggest fan. So he did. A few months ago, Aniah's dad Elijah did an interview with a local news station. No one has really heard much from him and Yeshiba throughout all of this. While Walt and Angela have been really public with their grief, Elijah and Yeshiba have felt it's a little better to stay low profile. Yeshiba is an attorney and has wanted to be very careful not to say anything that could mess up the case against Ibrahim. However, during Elijah's interview, he discussed some of what he has gone through in the last 3 years. Elijah has had to avoid the internet as much as possible because if he searches his name, Aniah pops up, which is something that is really hard for him. When he watches TV, there's always people killing people or just being straight up harmful to one another, which is also very difficult to watch. Her whole family is very religious and Elijah is a preacher. But losing Aniah in the way that they did is something that has challenged their faith over time. In September 2019, Elijah was a guest preacher and preached a sermon at a church. Aniah went to watch him and was so proud of him. But looking back, one of the hard parts for Elijah is that Aniah was wearing the same dress that day as she wore on the day that she was kidnapped. It is just another reason that he avoids the internet. He doesn't want to keep seeing the surveillance footage and seeing his daughter on there. But despite the pain that he has gone through and continues to go through, there are still memories with Aniah to hold on to. Memories of their last vacation together in 2018, for example. Memories of her on the softball field. Memories of her happy-go-lucky spirit. Aniah's impact on her friends is so evident. Her roommate Sarah works with Aniah's Heart daily. And thinking back to what happened to Aniah, I think it's really incredible that Sarah was so in tune with her friend to know that things were off and to start calling people. Aniah being taken in such a senseless way has definitely had an impact on Sarah, and the way that she does things is forever changed because of it. Aniah's best friend, Hannah Crocker, was also significantly impacted by what happened. Hannah was one who was out searching for Aniah daily when she went missing. At the time, she was going to school to be a nurse. However, she ended up shifting career paths and is now a police officer. She also had a daughter last September and named her Aniah after her best friend. While Aniah's family will never move on from losing her, just like no one moves on from losing a loved one, they continue to take steps forward and work on making a difference so that no one else goes through what they went through. They show up to every court date to represent Aniah as well, and while I am positive it's not easy for them, they do a very good job representing her and remaining calm through a very tough storm. There are still many unknowns to Aniah's case. Why her? Was he just driving around and looking for someone to hurt that night, to take that night? That seems to be what her family thinks. But even though there are still lots of questions, the most important thing is the person who law enforcement is sure to have taken Aniah's life is finally behind bars, being held accountable and not going anywhere anytime soon. And Aniah's memory will live on and help many others. So now that you've heard Aniah's story, I want to circle back to the Carlee Russell kidnapping hoax. When Carlee Russell went missing and selfishly made this elaborate story up about seeing the toddler on the side of the road and then vanishing and nobody could find her and the whole country came together trying to search for her, shed light on it, pass her flyer around, everything, all while this was a hoax, one of the main people helping in this and aiding in the search efforts was Aniah's mother, Angela. Helping, being a source of support for the family, being vocal about the dangers in Alabama, the dangers of a missing daughter. So then, imagine what a blow it was to be Aniah's mother, who will never get Aniah back, and realize that Carlee, this grown woman, made up the entire story. It was all a hoax. I bet Angela wishes that Aniah had only made it up as a hoax and that she wasn't truly missing and then murdered ultimately. And she had been helping this family, helping look for Carlee, helping spread awareness, only to find out that none of it was true. How heartbreaking. What a devastating, selfish blow to this family who is still grieving the loss of their daughter and trying to help other families going through similar things. It is just absolutely horrific every single way you look at it. It's like their heart is broken all over again. They held out hope when Aniah was missing, hoping they would find her. Ultimately, of course, they didn't, and devastatingly, she was murdered. Then you see this other family holding out hope, and she is returned. Not in a safe way of, oh my God, thank God, she's rescued, but she made it all up? Who would make up such a sick and twisted thing? Now, while we still don't know all of the answers as to why Carlee made up this hoax, whether she suffers from some sort of mental illness, mental health struggles, if it was a ploy for attention, there's of course no excuse. We don't know the reasons behind it, so I don't want to, have the pitchforks out too hard in the sense that maybe there is something more deeply rooted here, but it is still inexcusable, and it just makes my heart break for Aniah's family all over again because of what they had to go through. So please, not that I'm saying any of you guys are going to do a kidnapping hoax, but it makes me think of Sherry Papini, Carlee Russell, no matter how much attention you may want, no matter how bad a situation may seem, no matter where you think you need to escape to fictitiously, think of the ripple effect that your selfish actions may have on other people, on other families, on other victims, on other survivors. It's not just about you in that moment. So do something else that is less impactful on other people. Do something else to get attention. I don't know. But there has also got to be more accountability for situations like this because Carlee Russell, she's been arrested now with 2 misdemeanors. She didn't serve any time. She was in and out. She posted bond within moments. So she walked right out. There's footage of her walking out with a smile on her face, which is just eerie. But 2 misdemeanor charges. Her total bond amount, I think it was $2,000, which means she only had to post 10%, $200 to get out from making up a nationwide hoax, putting families like Aniah's through hell and re-traumatizing them all over again. And all you have to do is pay $200 and you're free to walk home and be back with your family and have no real repercussions. Where is the accountability there? We know that Sherry Papini actually is serving time, which is good, but there have got to be stricter laws in place because this is just absolutely unacceptable. And I don't know what the answer is to those laws, but it just infuriates me. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in today and hearing Aniah's story and her family's story and what she went through. Because while her name was back in the headlines as Carlee Russell was missing, people don't necessarily know exactly what her case is and what happened to her. And it's very, very important that her voice also be heard in all of this, especially since her murderer hasn't even gone to trial yet. And trust me, once that does go to trial, I will be following it very closely. And let's just pray that Aniah's family finally gets justice for their daughter. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that like button on your way out. That way you will see new videos as I post them. They'll just come up on your feed, whether you're on the computer, whether you're on your phone, wherever you're at. It'll show you when new case videos get posted. All right, guys, thanks again. And until the next one, stay safe.